Yo, yo, yo. I don't know if you guys just heard a beep, but I got one thing to say. Welcome to the fucking Smeth Den, baby. That's right. Welcome to the Smeth Den. I'm gonna get that fucking link out. I just got back from work. And now I'm back to fucking work. Except now you're in my fucking house. These are my rules. This is my place. We're gonna do whatever the fuck I want. Blah, 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 blah. Can't fucking stop me. You can't stop me. Let me get that fucking link out. Let me get that fucking link out. Yeah. We're talking about nukes tonight, baby. We're talking about nukes. This lighting's a little bit too fucking nuclear. How's that? We're talking about nukes tonight, baby. Okay. I can do whatever the fuck I want. I just finally got out of work. You're gonna have to put up with my shit now. I'm not putting up with your shit. You came here for my shit. I might as well. Oh, get nice and fucking. Oh, nice and comfortable. Oh, yeah. Get comfortable, because you're in the Smeth Den. And tonight we're going to be talking about nukes on this fucking panel. Yeah, nukes. Nuclear energy. Nukes are bad. Nuclear energy is good. Nuclear weapons can be good too. It's something to talk about. I'm sure somebody's going to say something fucking stupid. And if not, hey. You got me. Let's fight. Let's fight to the death. I think I'm gonna... I found it. I know where to go here. Alright, I'm gonna pop in. I'm gonna pop into this fucking voice chat, and then someone's gonna say something super soy. Just wait on it. Just wait. Listen, they're gonna say something super... Oh, nukes are so scary. I'm so afraid. Fucking soy. Losers. Fucking scared of nukes. They're too pussy to even pull me in. Yo, yeah, your message... Yeah, okay, yeah.
And then, an important thing is that if you go to OBS and then the gear next to virtual camera, you just make it so that your output for the virtual camera is set to scene, and then you pick that scene, and then no matter what you're in when you're streaming, it will still send just that scene.
What'd I tell you, everybody? As soon as we pop in, got someone saying something soy as fuck about fucking scenes, and, I don't know.
Here's my question. What is... Okay, I'm sorry. This has nothing to do with anything, but this Discord thing is freaking me out. Why does it say chilling TBH gaming in the zone? What are these little emojis?
So
I'm confused.
you, it's supposed to be cool.
Oh, it's cool, yeah. Very cool.
Okay, it's cool. Yeah.
There you go. Easy as that.
All right. Mystery solved.
I was very confused. I've never seen it before.
First off, I really appreciate the dedication of TunaChip going all the way to a
All right,
nuclear
I'm ready.
power plant for this. I mean, that's real
Yeah,
dedication.
I'm glad that you made it to Chernobyl. You know, like, listen, this is that's some dedication right
Yo,
there.
touch the
Is that
foot.
Chernobyl?
Touch the elephant foot, baby.
I
There you
go out of my way to figure out, you know, I go on the ground floor, I try and figure out, God, it's too much. Okay, every once in a while that happens, but
Yeah.
otherwise it's pretty safe out here. People they're a little over eager about the danger of nuclear power.
He did it. As counter number one. Okay, counter number one. The title of my stream right now is it's pronounced Nuke-You-Ler, not nuclear. And we got number one. One person's already said it right. We got it going. Let's go, baby.
Nice. Wait, how is it pronounced? I'm sorry.
It's spelled Nuclear. Nuke-You-Ler.
No,
It's
that-
phonetic.
Clear.
Can you
Right,
please?
yeah, yeah.
No,
That's
no, no.
how-
Des,
that's
no,
how
no,
I'm
no,
pronouncing it.
Don't let him go. Des, don't let him walk past this. Walk through those letters one at a time for me, slow motion.
Nucl.
No, pronunciatively, if that's a word.
It's actually pronounced nuclear.
Yeah, you just said Nuke-You-Ler.
I know. I was joking. I was being
I'm
a.
making sure that it's.
Yeah.
The troll is successful.
Tuna, you got him.
Okay. All right. Wait. Okay. Stop. Okay. We need to. Okay. I'm gonna do my intro now. Okay. All right. Bloody hell. Okay. I'm not British. Sorry. Okay. So. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Okay. Okay. Welcome to Food for Thought. All right. I'm your host and moderator, Foodshops. I will make sure things run smoothly in the background. Tonight's panel will be centered around nukes. The word nuclear, nuclear comes from the Latin word nucleus, which means core. According to Wikipedia, a nuclear weapon is an explosive device that derives its destructive force from nuclear reactions, either fission or a combination of fission and fusion reactions, or called thermonuclear bombs, producing a nuclear explosion. Either way, they are conventionally described as weapons of mass destruction. How the panel will go is that we will run the panel for approximately however long it takes for the conversation to die out, for people to mutate, but expect around 1.5 to 3 hours worth of panel, debate, and discussion. And then the time afterwards, the panelists can stay for the free-for-all, where I'll drag people on from the crowd at my discretion. If you want to be dragged on, you can just say so in the chat, or you can just DM me, okay? No problem. Yeah, also, like, if you guys have anybody you want to refer, or anybody from your crowd that you want to drag on, just let me know, okay? No problem. Very casual. During the entire time of regular panel time and afterwards, yeah, this is the part that says it. Any of the panelists are able to refer people from their audience that they know, to drag people in that they think would be good panelists themselves to be part of the discussion debate. Just let me know in DMs to not interrupt the flow. Let's go one by one on the panel and have our panelists introduce themselves and have their broad positions stated on the subject in a short manner with no interruption. Okay, let's go with Aliguana first.
Hi there. I'm Aliguana. That's Aliguana on YouTube. If you want to know the science behind how to not fail your New Year's resolution this year, I have a video dropping on New Year's Day on YouTube. My position on nukes is simple. No one person should have the ability to destroy the world. Every nuclear armed nation is a potential point of failure for Armageddon. We've nearly ended our civilization on accident dozens of times. It's not hyperbole. Right now you can Google a list of nuclear calls and see how long it takes to scroll to the bottom. Nuclear deterrence is effective at preventing much armed conflict. We might have fewer bar fights if we gave everyone a gun at the front door, but all it takes is one rowdy drunk to give the funeral house a boom business. Nukes aren't going away, but we have to push for non-proliferation, fewer buttons, fewer weapons.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Aliguana. Quibbles over coffee. Introduce yourself and your position, please. Thank you. Quibbles.
I'm Quibbles. Unfortunately, my Wi-Fi is terrible right now. Because I'm traveling, so I don't know if this is gonna work out.
No, you're good. You're
but if
good.
you
Don't
can
worry. Try
hear
the
me,
best
and
you
it
can.
is
Try the best you
functional.
can. Yeah, try the best you can. You're good.
Okay. Cool. Yeah.
The nuke got him.
I think that when we talk about nuclear weapons, it's primarily the issue is a matter of branding more than the actual effects of it. When I think about like the use of nuclear weapons as it's actually been used, it's not even the worst thing that America did to Japan during World War II, let alone is it the worst thing that happened on that front, let alone is it the worst thing that happened in that war in general. Think about the fact that we think about it in the way that we do, and we have this sort of intensity, sort of rhetorically, around the idea of a nuclear weapon. It strikes me as something that is disproportionate and is much more about sort of the rules of engagement. And I nonetheless do think that those rules of engagement are
Quibbles.
individually sensible.
Wait,
because I think it's important to have
Quibbles,
some of those rules. Yeah, what's up?
Wait, Quibbles. Do you think it's possible for you to switch to your phone and your data?
I can try to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be. I think that would be better. Meanwhile, while Quibbles is sorting that out, how about let's go to Seraph? Go ahead.
I'm Seraph Stone. I'm relatively new to the space, but
While he's
I guess,
sorting that
my
out, you get
position on
Picasso
nukes
mode.
is, like, pretty neutral. I think that, like, if we didn't have nukes, other countries would be actively scrambling to find some other form of mass destruction. So the fact that we have a pretty good understanding of the extent of damage that nukes can cause, I feel like it's the lesser of two evils, I guess. I don't know. That's about it.
All right.
It's real
right, Smeth.
Smeth. I've got a fortune cookie. Okay. And this inside this fortune cookie is gonna be my position on nuclear war and nuclear weapons.
What are the lottery numbers?
My position is mango. It says luck happens when hard work meets opportunity, bitch. Luck happens when hard work meets opportunity. So that's what exactly that's if you were Oppenheimer, truer words would never have been spoken to you.
I was gonna say, would you say that the bombing of Hiroshima was a mixture of hard work and opportunity?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. No, I think.
I mean, strictly true.
Okay, for number one, nuclear power is the future. Anybody that thinks otherwise is like a fear-mongering idiot. It creates way less waste than anything else, and it creates way more power than anything else. If we want to have a future that looks anything like what we want it to look like, and we don't want to just become farmers again, it's going to have to be nuclear energy. Number two, nuclear deterrent is good. It would have been better if we hadn't invented nukes. But now that we have them, it is a good, I think every country, like, it's true. The problem is having insane people in power. I think the thing we need to avoid is having like people like Trump in power that like we can't predict. And
Okay.
if we're gonna have people like Trump in power, maybe it's bad that we have nukes. That's how I think.
All right. Cool. Quibbles, by the way, if your internet is being too wonky, you can always turn video off because your
Yeah, I was gonna do that. Yeah.
Yeah, so don't worry about turning video on. You're all good. Yeah. All right, Quibbles, go ahead.
All right, so yeah, I don't know if you heard any of what I attempted to say the first time, so I apologize if.
No, you're
I
good. No,
interrupted
you're all
anything.
good. You're all good. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, so to Smeth's point there, that last point about like, it would be potentially okay if we had better leadership. I think that's categorically stupid, and he should be insulted for it. Because the reality is that when we're trying to design systems, we should be designing systems around the assumption that those systems are going to be handled and be controlled by people who are incredibly stupid, right? Because like the strength of a system is as strong as its weakest link, and the capacity to have systems that can be controlled by people, whether it's Trump or someone else, who are going to be able to abuse it is really dangerous. So I think that it's pretty clear that obviously we would be better off as a society if we just didn't have at all the threat of nuclear weapons. I think that's quite clear. Unfortunately, they do exist, and so if they're going to exist, I want to have the United States have them, because if Russia's going to have them as well, it's much better to have mutually assured destruction than to simply have destruction. But so yeah, that's my basic views.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna wait, but
Wait, hold on,
I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait.
Yeah.
I'm just letting you know I'm waiting.
I'm so ready.
Keep
I'm
your
ready.
underwear on.
Wait,
Ready.
Quibbles, why did you respond to Smeth in your opening
fine.
statement? You're not supposed to do that.
That's
Because
cheating.
I don't want to repeat
Keep
myself.
your
I don't know
underwear
how much
on,
you-
guys.
my
We'll
first
stroke
thing
each other off in a
started with.
moment.
I'm not gonna
Okay.
cuck
I don't know how much
Tuna.
my
Go
first-
Tuna. I don't want to cuck you.
Okay,
like-
Tuna, go. Yeah.
Okay. Nuclear arms
Yeah.
are inseparable from nuclear power. The existential threat of nuclear war forebodes on us, mostly because we have very strong graphical imagery of it. But nothing is more fearsome than a world that is losing alternatives to those resources, increasing the threat of a more brutal, more traditional form of war that we just don't remember because the pictures aren't as fancy and the videos aren't as detailed. Another issue on this, so I would say I'm generally in favor of nuclear power, and I think that war as a feature of all existence is going to be updated by it. There's no way that one technology, one grows without the other. The only other thing that I would say is that we will be less anxious about this once the returns of nuclear power outweigh the fear, and that's just going to happen over time. So the reason we're in this, we feel this fear so intensely right now is because we mostly think of nuclear as a topic. We think of it as just like, oh, one day I'm going to wake up dead. Well, maybe, but that's also true of all history. One day you're going to get fucked by the Vikings. Your wife and children are going to be lit on fire. One day napalm is going to, encapsulate your village. War is bad, but nuclear arms aren't the reason that war is bad. That's pretty much it.
Okay. All right, cool. Table, last one.
Hey, I'm Table, or basically Tabletop on YouTube. My stance on nukes is that nukes are probably the single greatest leap we've made towards global peace, as any country with nukes just can't be invaded at that point. However, it does create a huge imbalance between the nuclear haves and the nuclear have-nots. Additionally, the fallout from the use of nukes has been massively overplayed through a huge scientific doomerism that, when actually looked at, does not hold water decades later. But no one wants to step out of line in the scientific community, as one scientist literally quote said, because I didn't want to sound like I'd be advocating for nuclear war.
Okay. Awesome. With that being said, I think the first question is just referring to how you feel about nuclear weapons overall, which is basically all the positions that you guys have just said.
Yeah.
So yeah, just begin. That's it.
Okay.
So, wait.
All right, Smeth, I'm ready.
There was a statement that got made that I want to bring up first because this is the part that's really interesting. You said no one person should have the ability to destroy the world.
Yeah, I just said that. So can you give me a second to clarify, or do you want to jump on it?
Yeah. Go ahead and
right.
clarify on this.
Yeah. So basically, my principle is that, of course, I think everyone agrees here, nukes are going away. I think scientifically, the argument that, well, nukes are just kind of, they're inflated. The idea of the damage they can cause is incorrect, especially that's maybe a thought in the 1940s and 50s. Today, right, the amounts of weapons that Russia or the U.S. alone have is enough to destroy the world. That's factually true, right? Civilization as we know it, right? The concern that I have is that how many near misses we've had, right? The question is the point of failure. I'm not worried that someone's going to intentionally try to destroy the world. I'm worried is that one mistake leads to destruction. So, or to a catastrophic series cascading reactions.
Sure.
My point is that we need to minimize the points of failure. I think examples like where you have NATO, a huge alliance, and maybe one nation where that exists, right? Versus it is better as opposed to every nation in the world having to have nukes to ensure their own preservation.
Would you? Okay, so so your main fear seems to be about the misbalance such that somebody believes that they can be the one to flip the switch and start it. You're just worried about that.
Oh, my main fear is human error. Because of the amount of near misses we've had, and that we need to make sure that we're not just ignoring a near miss because this is really important evidence.
Be more clear. Be more clear what you
yeah.
mean by near miss.
Yeah. So, for example, so like I said, we can scroll through the wiki page of that. One of the go-to examples are the Russian submarine, which believed that the United States, this was during the Cold War, believed the United States had launched weapons toward Russia. That's what their sensors had picked up. They weren't able to connect back with their with Moscow to get confirmation. So they were their prerogative, what their orders were to launch nuclear weapons on the U.S. The only reason they didn't was because of the commander of that nuclear submarine said, "I'm not going to do this." Right. So what I'm saying is that when I say near miss, is that only by happenstance have we managed to avoid it. Right. Because of these
Total
false
nuclear
indicators.
fallout being the it, right? You're saying,
Nuclear war, right? Nuclear war, which we've never had a war between two nuclear powers go nuclear, right? And I think if we saw that, right, it's very easy to imagine that if you're in a war of survival, that you're going to do whatever it takes to survive, which might mean destroying the other person. And if they have the same idea, what's to stop it?
Well, I mean, the question about a two-sided nuclear war is less about there is no survival in that instance. I think a lot of people, the way that they're talking about it is preparations for nuclear war. They incentivize getting off the planet or having an ability to get off the planet. They incentivize having some form of
missile defense
shelter program or counter radiation program. But I don't think that you can really say anything about like, well, if only I nuke them first, because we know that the detection systems, they're going to know by the time before they get hit, they're going to know that something got sent, and they're just going to say, well, fuck it. If we're going to die, they're going to die. Like,
but that's why no one ever pulls the trigger, because everyone knows it's suicide.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but exactly. So all it takes is either a crazy person or a wrong person.
It's not actually like in the hands of one person, and that's kind of why I don't like nukes. The thing that that makes me want to like nukes is my position on firearms, where like women wouldn't have rights if we didn't have guns in the United States. Trans people would not exist if we didn't have guns in the United States. And so if I think about that logic and I apply it to nukes, then but the thing is, it's not like everybody has a fat boy nuke launcher where like any person can be empowered by a nuke. It's like a government. It's oppressive almost. So it's different.
The difference though is like guns as we have them in the United States are the reason that somewhere like Vietnam or Cambodia is able to fight back against the strongest military in the history of the world, right? And it's the reason that we are an independent country from the United Kingdom, which is far stronger than we are as well. That's different than nuclear weapons, which are controlled and have always been controlled by those who are in power. So it is a fundamentally different type of weapon than something like an AK-47, which I think reasonably understood.
They require a resource pool. They require a resource pool that no one person's labor could possibly.
Exactly.
The only thing it could only exist under a organized public or private system. So like the question of one person having control, really that comes down to your opinion on how governance should happen. It has very little to do with your opinion on the power itself.
Well, it does, because it's about the practicality of it, right? It's about, we need to understand how it's used.
Hold on.
You can make a claim of different types. Yeah, you can make a claim of two different types of weapons having different levels of centralization of power. Right? You can talk about like the decentralization of a pistol as a decentralizing system, as Smeth was saying about something like women's rights or the rights of others who are physically weaker. Whereas, because obviously prior to that, the centralization of like, fisticuffs, that's in the hands of men and a very specific type of man.
Intra versus extra social,
Exactly
like we're talking about engaging between two cultures that don't have shared values and then ones that have shared values. Yeah.
And so when you talk about nuclear weapons, that's something that's the most centralized form of military control that we could possibly imagine, or at least we have imagined in human history so far.
Yeah. Okay. I don't like
it's on the same. It's on the same scale of like usage of aircraft carriers.
No, it's not. It's like there are there's a lot more countries that have access to aircraft carriers than have control over
actually
weapons.
it's almost the exact same list of countries.
I don't know.
It's like 13 different countries have nukes right now.
I could imagine.
Yeah, and there's actually fewer countries than that have aircraft carriers. Aircraft carriers are not very common.
Let's say that like we want to like dedicate your whole life. I could imagine you could like build an aircraft carrier, like if like your life project kind of like, but a nuke though. No, I don't.
You're demented.
No,
not without engaging in massive amounts of trade.
Aircraft
The
carrier?
problem-
I'm just talking
the
like a
problem
giant
is
ship
there's a
that
difference.
has a flat surface you can like launch a like aircraft off
You
of.
stand on the shoulders of giants to be able to engage in any form of carrier, any form of aircraft, any form of car. That's impossible for one person to do.
Well, I
We're
think you guys
ignoring
are missing that Smeth's next video is actually like one of those things where you go to a
How I
gun
learned to
show
stop
and you're like trading
how I
up each time.
I'm currently on an
So,
aircraft
We're
carrier.
working on it. Yeah.
How I learned to stop sending nuclear warheads at North Korea. That's your next video.
I think we're ignoring the key difference, which is de-escalation. You can de-escalate after an aircraft carrier has launched an attack. You can't de-escalate after nukes have been launched because, right, the principle of mutual destruction means you have to respond as soon as you see that. The problem is no de-escalation.
So real quick, there's 14 countries that have aircraft carriers if you include helo carriers, which are significantly smaller and much less of a big deal.
I'm not
So-
convinced. I'm not
yeah.
convinced you have to respond. I don't think that's necessarily true.
Cuck.
No, I mean like so
No,
if you want to survive, like
Oh,
like if you actually want to survive, like the best option might be to use a nuke, but like that might actually there might be something smarter to do.
I ask you a question, Smith. If let's say Russia launched a nuclear attack in the United States, what is the first thing they target?
Our nukes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why we have to respond immediately. Otherwise, we lose our ability to respond at all, which means there is no.
So they have to know where our
Yeah.
nukes are.
It's
too.
also
Oh.
worth noting, like literally just getting them out of there is a priority.
Well, they
Yeah.
actually
Is
know
it
where our nukes are because we
Chained
basically told them.
activation.
Well,
If you look into the U.S. nuke
No, Table, that's not
strategy,
true.
yeah,
That's
we
not
have like
true.
submarines
That's not
that
true
are
at all.
constantly
There are-
moving.
well,
there are
and
we
launching.
have
There
well,
are certain
yeah, we have
nukes that
nukes in
obviously
the subs, but the
there's a
nukes.
large
Wait,
The nukes
Dale, that's not true at all, and it hasn't been true for a long period of time. That wasn't even true in the Cuban Missile Crisis. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, they didn't actually get rid of their nukes in Cuba. They got rid of the ones that were public in Cuba, but they kept others that were still in Cuba, and we found that out in like the 80s, right?
Right, but
That
the
was like
nukes on the mainland.
Yeah,
very
if you
clearly
think that we
are
just go along with everybody
primarily
knowing where our
in-
nukes are, like we're the superpower.
Very
Like,
silly,
we would be
yeah.
we'd be so stupid
Okay.
if we didn't just put nukes somewhere else.
I mean,
Part of the nuclear defense strategy of the U.S. was having that our mainland silos, the ones that they could target, because they can't target our subs, right? Which is why we have a bunch of subs with nukes everywhere. The ones they can target are off out in the Midwest in low population areas, so that they have to target them first, and they do the least amount of damage.
They probably have the least amount of nukes there at this point, if that's the case. I mean,
I
We-
mean,
we have-
probably, but
we
that's
have
the only
math-
ones they could target. But
you
they
know how
have to
much we
target
spend
them.
on our
Okay,
intelligence?
I don't understand what's the goal of the conversation. What's the
exactly.
question we're trying to get to? I don't want to be talking about.
Well, the
Yeah,
goal,
it's-
the original question was, you guys state your positions. It seems like there is the full range of opinion, but then the original question that I am seeing right now is on nuclear weapons overall. How do you feel about them? Have they brought peace to the world, or have they brought the disguise of peace? Where that lies underneath is the winter of mankind. Why or why not? I've shared this document with the group chat already.
I think
Yeah,
they
so I
actually
feel like
have brought
Aliguana's
peace in the short term, recent history. They actually have brought peace.
right, but there's the question that Aliguana is bringing up, which is like how long and how stable is that peace? Because the reality is that peace has been won through this sort of eye of the storm kind of situation, where at any given point, every year we're increasing the number of people who have the individual power, like already Kim Jong-un does, like very quickly the leadership of Iran will, like very quickly the leadership of number of countries. There's an increasing number of people who have the ability, with a click of a button, to destroy, at the very least, a very large proportion of our entire global population, but potentially in the relatively near future, the entirety of the world population, as is already the case with both Russia and the United States, and potentially also China.
I don't disagree with you. But I think that is less of a question of nuclear power, and still also a question of just like, what do we think the checks and balances of any form of power needs to be? Because if it's going to be an arm, or if it's going to be like, if for a person to have
the point is that
the government needs to be able to allow them to operate or be the government themselves, and then the people and the and the international community from both ends, that government needs to be justified from both of those parties to some extent, or else it's not actually going to happen in a launch. right? You're
Yo,
not
Thinking domestic.
thank you so
Yeah,
much for the
I think
$10,
the
bad
undergirding
horsey.
problem of the whole thing is that just by virtue of like
Yeah,
the
next year is
way
gonna
that
be
trade networks
blowing up,
worked, and by
baby. It's
virtue of the
only up
military
from here.
capacity that they had, even when someone like Alexander the Great, or one of the emperors of Rome, managed to take
Thank
over
you.
a very sizable proportion of the world society, there were like definitional caps on their power because they literally weren't able to communicate quickly enough. And there were definitional limits on their power because they simply weren't able to control the totality of their army. They had to cede control and so there was a functional checks and balances system, even in the case of very, very, very dictatorial systems in
Sure.
previous generations. Whereas when you look at the North Korea of today, or you look at the Iran of today, the worst despots of 2024 and certainly of 2050 are going to be categorically dissimilar from the worst despots, even of Hitler, let alone of the ones that are further back from them.
I need to correct something. When I said that has brought peace, I think that's actually not true. It's brought peace to nuclear powers, and we now use like poor people to kill each other instead. So like,
Sure, that's it. Yeah, it's the dawn of the Cold War, which is only cold if you happen to live in the
yeah,
lovely places where you can have a Cold War.
I mean,
yeah.
To talk about the sort of analogy innate, right? Core. If we're going to talk about like what is the question of a sort of like imperial core, it is whether or not you're on the cutting edge of whatever the civil technology is on the global scale, which happens to be nuclear power right now. Do you think that okay? Everybody here agrees the power's staying, the arms are an inextricable part of that power.
How dare you assume I agree?
Okay, there are two. There are two different. There are two different
I do have a
directions.
question. So I do have a question.
This is a question I want to pose because I think that it's the
Sure.
thing that hasn't been answered for this question, which is there are two different directions you go. The entire world needs to just downscale the presence of nuclear arms, the ones that have them, obviously, or we need to create counter war technologies that make it so that if someone were to send a nuke, that there is a response better than just nuking back.
An AI that if you ever press the nuke button, it automatically releases publicly all of your emails and all of your private messages to the world, so that there's a deterrent for anybody to ever launch a nuke.
I think we need like a net in the sky to catch like nukes, like a sky net.
Iron Dome.
I think this was just called the Star Wars program.
Yeah.
So
But
when you're saying send nukes back, do you mean like the nukes we're sending to intercept the missiles, or do you mean
no? I'm
actually
saying better than just like saying, okay, guess we just opened the war door. Like
Okay.
I'm saying, should we be focusing more on trying to, in whatever we can, test to find the strongest counter nuke arm? Like that, I think that's probably the most reasonable.
haven't done that?
We
Yeah, I'm
do
pretty
do
sure,
that.
They're probably even working on it now.
Well,
Yeah,
no, we
the
already
problem is
have
that's
that.
released.
We have a bunch of those, like the U.S. anyway, has layers of those systems.
Yeah.
The thing is, you always have the nuke as the retaliatory, as the deterrent to not use nukes in the first place, though. It's yes, we probably will shoot down at least most of your nukes, but you're also going to get all of our nukes back, which is why you don't do it in the first place. Because, I mean, people shoot normal missiles at us all the time. Not the U.S. mainland, but like, say, the Houthi rebels at our ships, for example, right now. They shoot normal missiles, but like no one in their right mind is going to shoot a nuclear armed anything not because we'll shoot it down, but because we're going to retaliate.
How do you
kind.
future-proof that technology? How do you future-proof that technology from new technologies then? Like, are we supposed to, like, well, no, I'm saying, I'm not just talking about having more or having faster or having better nuclear arms. I'm saying because that's the flatbed. If we were to get rid of that, we would find a new flatbed and then a new technology become the dominant technology. The future is probably that we will find something that's even more dangerous.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
nanites.
If I had to guess.
Like you could literally, like to the point where you like literally like have a doomsday button that ends the universe. You know what I mean?
Let's just be clear about something. Yeah, let's just be clear about something. Like the ability to have weapons of mass destruction is not actually as new as we like to do it credit for. When we talk about like the salting of Carthage, for example, like that was a very long time ago, and it destroyed an empire because they literally salted the earth. They literally made it so you could no longer grow it, and they starved like many thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands, perhaps even millions. It's not even clear exactly how many people died as a result of the fact that they literally salted the earth. Right? When we talk about the impact of the kinds of behaviors that we did in World War One, even in terms of the way that we engaged in science warfare, all of those things. This isn't actually that new. What it's actually about is what are the rules of engagement for different military powers, and how do those rules of engagement change? And that's not a new conversation. What's new is the sort of the changing landscape of who is and who is not considered to be a real power. Because for a very short window there, after the end of World War II, there was an understanding, there was an expectation that the world powers, the real powers, were going to be, lowercase d democratic-ish for a very short period of time. And then there was the rise of the USSR as a non-democratic nation. And increasingly, when we see to places like Iran, places like North Korea, places like China, they're also non-democratic. And so there's this broader question there. But I don't think that the weapons of mass destruction is actually as new as we give it credit for.
I think also we need to be a little bit kind of scientifically realistic about that. Yeah, if someone builds a bigger sword, we should build a bigger shield, right? The problem is that when you get to the unique things about, right, there have always been weapons capable of killing, many people, right? What's the difference between, someone who dies in a firebomb versus a nuke? Well, to them, I don't think it's that different, right? The main difference is that the speed and capability at which we have to destroy entire civilizations. And that simply, right, if we say, oh, well, we should instead of like having to have an arsenal to respond, we should invest in having a shield that can take these weapons down. That is, right, optimistic, but it's not realistic
in that
situation.
Like when we started World War II, there was an understanding between the Allies and the Axis that we weren't going to engage in trench warfare. Because there's an expectation, having just gone through World War I, that trench warfare would be the worst kind of experience that you could possibly imagine.
You mean gas, not trench, right? Trenches were obsolete after tanks. The main thing is gases.
And so exactly. And so gases ended trench warfare. And so the way that you ended trench warfare, which was absolutely horrible, and millions of people died as a result of trench warfare, was because you made trench warfare no longer possible, because you made something that was even more deadly and destructive than trench warfare itself. Right.
Yeah, it's built a bigger sword, not a shield. That's the problem, right? Is that we can always say that.
And so the point is that
these are going to be the ends.
Shields don't exist.
Well, the other thing is, like, if we're looking at like trying to build a shield, we're working on like a system of countering other people, and so our opponents are constantly going to have the upper hand because they're going to be developing new ways that are specifically designed to get around our defenses. So at a certain point, we're not going to be able to like imagine defenses that could stop weapons that we don't understand
it's not
yet,
like
right?
It's not like you can make a trench that gets around gas. I mean, maybe like you could build like
technically you can make a mask, right? Technically, could you wear like a gas suit, right? There are ways we can think about it that where
Aliguana, TunaChip, go. Yeah.
It does it not seem like the other direction? Just total economic supremacy, to the point where if anyone were to kill you, it would kill them even if you didn't send nukes back. Like that is probably the way
a
that
global
we're
government would do it.
It
I'm
doesn't
gonna be right
require
back. I'm gonna be right back.
It requires interdependence.
Yeah,
You can get
I'm
to
gonna
that
be right
through
back.
Can you
interdependence.
I'm gonna have
Ray, just
myself
repeat yourself.
babysit
I could
you.
not hear you over Smeth. Just there.
I'm gonna babysit
Yeah,
myself.
you can get to
babysit you.
interdependence. You don't need to have supremacy to have
Wait,
the
Quibbles,
impossible.
Quibbles, one thing. Can you move your mouth closer?
My hand. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, you're good.
Is this better? Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. We're just
I
holding my
just keep
finger.
going. Yeah, you're good. Yeah.
Just talk.
Yeah. You don't need to be economically dominant over another place for it to make no sense for them to attack you. You need to be economically interdependent. In fact, having domination economically over them is actually not in a more stable place. The interdependence is a lot better. So, for example, you would not ever see China or America invades Singapore, for example, because Singapore is so useful to both of our economies as an independent state. And so that's just never going to happen. It's not going to happen to New Zealand. It's not going to happen to
When I
Australia.
say dominance,
number of
hey,
places.
we're just we're getting into a semantic misunderstanding, because I meant like dominance as in like predominance, presence, necessity. I'm not talking about dominance. That's just a slight different. I am perhaps using the wrong word, but we're on the same page then. I'm saying I think that's the way.
Superiority.
That's the thing that's actually producing peace, not the ever presence of a bigger sword and everybody has the biggest sword possible and everybody's matching the same sword. The real thing that's going on is that is that international capital is recognizing all of these different spheres that do have power as being, as opposed to enemies or opponents, as being part of like some slightly tangled sum that has disagreements from time to time, but doesn't want to resolve things by eradicating the other, but more so just finding a way to like get an edge on the other in one direction, get an edge over here, get an edge over here.
Yeah, because like we wouldn't actually want to eradicate China. We want them to work. We want China's labor and shit. We don't actually want them to disappear. You know, we want to dominate.
But everyone here is assuming that nuclear weapons will only be held by those who are acting reasonably and correctly, right? Let's imagine a world. Let's be topical. Let's imagine a world where Hamas has a capability of a nuclear weapon, right? Who says they aren't going to launch that against Israel, right?
That's actually one of the questions.
I mean, yeah. And I'm implying that with the Iron Dome statement too, which is like, how ahead do you have to be before the only thing that you're supposed to be doing is creating stronger and stronger defense? If you're severely ahead, then that's kind of your moral imperative.
Wait, hold on. I sort of want to take. Sorry, I'm so sorry.
Go for it.
So the question I sort of want to ask here is: Israel is a nuclear power, right? So this is the fourth question. Israel is a nuclear power. How does that play a part in global conflicts currently going like today, right? Why is that like either a positive or a negative thing when it comes to neighboring powers or negotiating at the table, right?
Well, it's really
because it means that there's a Cold War. What it means that it's a nuclear power is that it means a Cold War between Iran and Israel rather than a direct war between Israel and Iran.
And
there will never be a direct
war. And I want to go back to ChunaChip after Quibbles. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the reason that there's never going to be war between Iran and Israel, because one is already a nuclear power and Iran is on track to becoming a nuclear power. It does definitely not mean that they don't hate each other. It definitely doesn't mean that they're not going to continue to have a Cold War between one another. Saudi Arabia increasingly is also involved in that Cold War against Iran as well. But that doesn't mean that they're going to actually go to actual war. And so it does mean that millions of people are going to be alive because of that, but it also means that places like Gaza and places like the West Bank are going to be very shitty for a very long period of time, as is Lebanon, as is Syria, all as a result of Iran's Cold War rather than hot war.
And we can see that repeating over with India and Pakistan, both of which are nuclear powers that are not in the the non-proliferation treaty. They're independent of that treaty entirely, but they both have nukes, and they both haven't done anything significant in like 30 years.
They're doing something a little bit different, which is not exclusively just a Cold War. They're also doing a war that is a direct war between one another over their border. But that border war is happening exclusively, literally with like swords and shit, because they're not willing to allow even guns, even just normal pistols, into that component of their war, because they're concerned, both sides terrified that this might actually get to a nuclear war between one another.
Yeah, which India's doing the same. China, actually, same thing. They're like beating each other in clubs in a river.
The real question is useful. The real question is, do we want every country to have nukes? And then would that actually make the world a better place if every country had nukes?
I think so.
I think it would be a lot less impactful than people think it would be.
Every country.
That's the worst case scenario.
Something that I think isn't being brought up is that like nukes are like.
Let's stay on that. Let's stay on that.
Well, no. This is like related. This is related. I'm sorry. I worded that poorly. I don't. One of the main reasons why I think that situations like Hamas and Israel and Pakistan and India wouldn't resort to nukes is because the whole point of their dispute, or at least a decent size of it, is that they want each other's land. So using a weapon that destroys the land is kind of counterintuitive to like like sending rockets is one thing because it's not like making the land completely unusable and unlivable. But if you're nuking the place and you want like the religious artifacts and stuff, like
Yeah,
it
there's a
just
lot
doesn't
of
make a lot of
reason.
sense.
There's a lot of reasons not to nuke. One of them would be that. That's a good reason to maybe theorize why one wouldn't use a nuke against a non-nuclear power, just because like you could say that like Russia could have just nuked Ukraine. I don't think Ukraine has nukes, right?
No.
So yeah, like
Not
that.
anymore.
Well, Ukraine.
Yeah,
Let's be
not
careful.
anymore.
Ukraine no longer has nukes. Ukraine did have nukes at
Yeah,
the time that it was founded as a country.
but it's still
Let's
not.
be crystal clear about that.
It's still not what they. It's not.
Right,
They still don't actually want to
but
just nuke them. So there's a
correct.
lot of
But
reasons
we're
not to
talking
use
about
nukes. So
But when we're talking about Ukraine, I think this is a really interesting example because the reason that Ukraine doesn't have nukes is because it was part of a larger deal between the United States and the falling USSR, which is to say that we were not going to move NATO towards the USSR, and in conjunction with that, the USSR was not going to invade Ukraine, and so both we first and then they broke that deal on either side of it, and the result has been a very deadly war, and that war has been absolutely atrocious and has resulted in its own fact to result in many, many, many more deaths than it already has, when already upwards of 10 million people are refugees as a result.
we should have given
Right?
them nukes.
Well, I mean, the real problem is that Ukraine had its own treaty with Russia, where Russia was like, "Yeah, give us the nukes back, and we won't invade you." And that was in 1991. And Ukraine was like, "Okay, don't invade us, and we'll give you your nukes back." And then they
Before
did
we
anyway.
get to
Dumb.
Before we get too far in the weeds, can we just backtrack a little? Because I feel like I hear a lot of people that are actually surprisingly against nuclear non-proliferation. They're saying, hey, it'd be good if every country had nuclear weapons. And I think that would be a catastrophic choice because I've had nobody address the fact that how many points of failure before we say this risk is too fucking high, right? The problem is that what would be good, right, which is we're not getting rid of nukes. The current system we have of having a large alliance with few nuclear powers that agree to defend each other seems to be the best way of preventing huge conflicts, right? The one that we can all say, hey, Russia hasn't attacked a member of NATO, right? And we see that these are, and that's what I want. I think this is my position, which my objective is to say convince you guys that we don't want every country having nukes. Every point of failure is too high of a risk. It is better to mitigate those points of failures, but maintain the security of the world overall, right?
But no, you have it backwards. There are massive wars going on like everywhere, but they're all with third world countries that don't have nukes, or you have multiple nuclear powers invading or committing war crimes that no one can do anything about.
That's not relevant to what he's asking. What Aliguana is saying is that there is a potential of like existential threat. The existential threat increases with every single country that has nuclear weapons, which is true.
One nuke or even does nukes.
For every little tiny weird country that has nukes, there's like a fucking drop of chaos.
Okay, so as you increase the number of people who have access to the button, that increases the chances of the nuclear catastrophe, right? But also it's true that as you increase that, you're also getting in the meantime stability, and you're in the meantime getting more and more places that are off limits to having normal war. And so that having that off limits, I think that there's a strong case that could be made that if everyone had nuclear weapons, every single country had nuclear weapons, we would see a time of peace, and that peace would be very difficult to break. However, that peace would also come with something, which is to say that though trade would go across borders and all that would go across borders, it would also mean that dictators would be nearly impossible to overthrow. And so those countries that are already doing relatively well going in, places like the United States, are going to be basically great. And we're going to have great trade relations with all these places. But places like Iran, which are horrible despots, are going to stay despots for a very long period of time.
And worth mentioning also that, as was mentioned, you don't need nuclear arms in order for you to be safe. Your government has access to it, so why wouldn't a nation be under a sort of like agreement that then allows it? If we're trying to ask a question of like, what do we? I don't think people want proliferation of arms. They want proliferation of relation with powers that have arms, equitable relations. And the question is, how is that going to happen? It's probably not going to happen by them having nuclear arms. But
this
that would
is
go against the point of them having a relationship to begin with. There are places that, like, I think that if you had to come up with the best situation possible, it would be that, like fucking all the entire there we want, not even my ideal situation, but you can imagine a very peaceful situation where there's one world government and all of the nuclear power is down on Antarctica or in Serbia or something, as far away from dense populations as possible. That's what we're, I think should be worried about, is not even just like somebody presses a
but
button.
now we're getting to a
accident.
centralization.
I'm talking about like an earthquake.
Right, but now
Also-
we're getting to a point where the centralization there is like really horrifying, right? Like even if it's a democratically elected centralized power, I certainly am scared just of the amount of power that the president of the United States has currently, and that is only increasing, and it's only centralizing around the federal government generally, and specifically around the presidency itself. And that is only going to become more true if you get to sort of a Secretary General of the UN that's like genuinely real.
I mean, I
Especially
agree
if
with
it's
you, and
on
that's
a
why I'm
global
saying that I
level.
think that the most of the fears that people have about nukes are just are a fear of the changing texture of government working its way through, being processed through the topic, but it has very little to do with the thing itself, because you could replace it with so many other
That's fair.
fear factors. So we
mean,
don't
I
have
wanna-
to worry about the details on how does nuclear power work, when that should be the most important thing to be talking about here, is the fact that there is no way that we're going to get away from nuclear arms and also have nuclear power. So what are we sacrificing if we engage in de-escalation? Because you have to regulate that technology. You have to make it so that that's going down. And just to reiterate my point, the war, real war, which I think that you agree in general here, is going to make a return, and it's going to be more devastating for the average citizen. It's going to be like the fear, the existential fear, as opposed to like literally your child just had a spear put through its skull. Like there's a world of difference. I just think that that's it's
When you
strictly
say
better to be
average
scared
citizen,
than to be
average
dead.
citizen of where?
Say it again.
Average citizen, because the thing that I don't like about the philosophy, and I definitely agree that like if we give every country nukes, it means that there's more points at which the critical failure can happen. I do agree, but also the principle of just having like large conglomerates of nations, where like big nations have like all like this power and you gather around, it makes it so that we're now living a world where there's like tons of proxy wars. So like it's like to do that is to sacrifice the theoretical and dangerous security that everybody having nukes would give, by making a status quo of having constantly all the poor people fighting each other on behalf of these big conglomerates, just so that we can all feel safe about not having that chaotic snap of the finger thing happen. So like what I personally think, and this would be very offensive to a lot of these, because whenever I get into these discussions about global politics and stuff, I just think about all these small, like Ukraine, like these small countries, and I think like if in the world we want to go to, a safe world, we need to not have these little countries. Like we need to have like 2 or 3 countries. Like all these other countries need to disappear. It's chaos. We need only like 4 countries if we want to have a safe world going forward.
I want to flag though.
Okay.
Go for it.
That is where we're going. That is like what it doesn't need to be a country in this like very literal term where they lose their name, their heritage, and their identity, but that is the march of international capital. You're not going to be able to avoid that. That's what creating all these trade relationships is doing. You were making it so that they are one body.
Yeah, but the thing is, if we do, with the status quo, it would take a radical move for us to actually leap from to actually incorporate them as one of us, because we want to make the status quo go forward. We want to have like poor people fighting somewhere else. Like these proxy wars are beneficial to us. So like we don't want to actually act like Ukraine is part of the United States or whatever the fuck we want to decide. We don't actually want to like we want to have that degree of separation. We want to be able to let them like it'll feed our fucking our weapons trade. We get to fight our battle and we get to fight like these other powers by making shit happen there, and we don't have to actually deal with so much of the consequences. We actually make money off it.
I think there's a major thing both Smeth and Tuna are getting wrong right now. So number one is that the idea that nuclear power and nuclear weapons are completely inseparable. I think this is categorically incorrect, right? We have many. It is true that technologically they're like, but right, Tuna, you keep focusing on policy, right? One thing is that policy-wise, they're completely unrelated. Scientifically, right next to each other, right? The other thing to consider is that I hear a lot of people talking feelings. So fear, feel like this, right? Want this. Here's the thing. It's very simple. It's a calculated risk, right? Is that every country that has nukes increases risk of misfire, right?
Slow down.
And
Wait,
we
I need your help.
out.
So with the first thing you said, I still don't understand. You said that we don't understand the difference between nuclear power and nuclear weapons. Can you help me understand? I don't know what you're saying.
Sure. So I'm specifically responding to when Tuna said every time how that we can't separate the policy of nuclear power and nuclear weapons. I think these are separable because when we have large alliance, nuclear power should be something that every country is capable of using, right?
So the nuclear power, are you saying the nuclear power comes from being like in the UN?
Technologically,
yeah, I'm
no.
I'm not. I
the
when
work
if you're
of
asking
one
me
is
to make
the
a
work of
policy
doing the other.
prescription,
Okay, let me say what my understanding, and you tell me if I misunderstood you, Tuna. What I understood is that you were saying that countries that have, as they've got nuclear power, right, they will discover the technology, at least in nuclear weapons, and therefore we need to regulate nuclear power the same way that we regulate nuclear weapons, and therefore because we think and we just power-wise, every country should have the ability to use nuclear power. Therefore, every country should have the ability to have nuclear weapons.
The regulation I'm talking about. The regulation I'm talking about would not be I don't know who's trying to talk at the same time as me. Can I okay.
Go
it's
for
fine.
it.
It's fine. If I'm being addressed, I want to answer it. So that's the reason. The regulation I'm talking about is in the development and research and the research and development angle. I'm not saying that you need to have every single nation have access to arms directly and power directly. What I'm saying is that in order for progress on the power front to happen, in order for us to become more efficient, fuel efficient, or power energy efficient, frankly, is what we're going towards, then you're going to be discovering more and more war technology. There's no way to escape those progresses. And we know that we want to progress on this clean energy, quote unquote, front, and also somehow de-escalate on the existential fear of nuclear arms. And what I'm saying is that you're not going to be able to do both without instead just really, as soon as we start seeing more of the gains on an international scale, the gains of nuclear power, that happening is the only thing that's going to make it so that the fear dwindles. You're not going to
that's my disagreement. That's my disagreement. The fear, it's not right. It's not about how right, because power doesn't protect us from nuclear weapons, right? And that's what I think. I keep hearing you say fear and not risk. How does more nuclear power reduce the risk of somebody pressing a button?
Because you then become someone that can sell that power.
When you say power, you mean energy, right?
Okay. Hold up. Can we?
We mean energy. This instance of power is energy.
The word power, it's just
move on. It's we're talking about energy.
Yeah.
We'll use the word energy. It's fine.
But here's what I'm saying,
we're doing a stream where people are fucking listening. Okay.
I answered your question.
Okay,
Change your underwear.
Well, we're doing a stream where there are viewers listening. We don't want to have this obtuse fucking retarded conversation that nobody understands except for us. Why are we having
a meta argument?
Okay?
Stop.
Okay, there's no reason for the meta argument.
When we're saying power, we're meaning nuclear energy.
I'm calling the police.
We're talking about this issue of the effects of having so many people have this button that they can press. If we talked to people not that long ago about everyone having the button of being able to tell the public, go on television as we all are on currently, right? That would be a huge thing. If we had the ability to, press a button and boom, you're able to shoot a gun, right? It's not that long back that would be a shocking thing that literally there are more guns than people in the United States. It would not be that long back that all of these different things. And yes, those certainly have had consequences, but I think that the broad point that we're certainly better off as a result of having done those technological moves forward, because of the energy implications, because of the implications in terms of our ability to have trade networks and all of those different things. I'm a little less pessimistic than I think Aliguana is seeming to be.
So wait, can I just respond really quick to Quibbles?
Yeah.
And then you go.
Yeah.
So I think that the critical thing here is that which I still really haven't heard is that I'm not pessimistic. I'm just about risk mitigation, right? I want fewer buttons. I want more alliances. And I haven't. And I think that what you're not considering. Last point, and then I'll let you go.
Yeah.
I think that you're not considering is that when it comes to destruction, there's a critical point when it doesn't matter how much farther you go. We can have enough weapons to destroy the world 20 times. It's just as effective as having the weapons to destroy the world one time, right? And the difference between guns, between steel swords and all this to the modern arsenal of atom bombs is the number one, the lack of ability to de-escalate after something has happened, and number two, the destructive capability has reached the critical point. Doesn't matter how much higher we go, when you're already destroying everything.
Yeah, I think that the way that I think about it is like. So for context, I'm traveling currently, and I was on a highway. I'm trying to think about like how many people today had the ability, if they wanted to kill me very easily, like trivially easily. Like they would die too, for sure, but they could kill me. There were literally thousands of people who could have crashed their car into me today, right? And none of them did, right? And we do have car crashes in this country, that's true, but there are very few car crashes in this country. And like compared to the number of people,
okay, thank you.
Right. And so like I actually don't think that decreasing the number of buttons is actually the problem. I think that the problem is like making sure that pressing those buttons is always going to be consequential and will never be something that's in the interest of people to do so.
You're assuming a reasonable actor though, and that's the risk.
Yeah, I am. I think the vast majority of people are reasonable, and the evidence that I would look to is the fact that we don't have that many people who get into car crashes intentionally.
Yeah, exactly. But most car crashes are accidental, right? You need a reasonable actor with correct information. If those two aren't met, you have a risk of something happening.
So the information
and you can't always guarantee that.
Everyone knows. So every country needs to know, because we're talking about very large organizations. We're not talking about something like cars. It's never going to get to a point where this is going to be something that's done by an individual. It's always going to be a very large organization.
Oops, I slipped and I fell and I pressed the nuclear explosion button. You know what I mean?
What we need to ensure is that no country believes that they can get away with nuclear war. And certainly Russia believes that they can't get away with it. Certainly America believes they can't get away with it. Certainly China does, as does Israel and all the others, right?
Okay, can I jump in? Because I've got like 3 stored up points that like address all of these.
Unload, baby.
So, yeah.
Before you got do, them on the table.
I have to bounce. I have to go.
Okay.
I'm just
You have to go?
Okay, yeah. Closing statements. Yeah, go ahead.
All right.
Yeah, closing statement. My closing statement is simple, which is that I think that we're a lot more on track for the future that we want than we think that we are, and that a majority of the wrinkles are being worked out, and it's happening slow, and it looks fucking disgusting because war still exists, but we are moving towards a position where every nation is in some kind of equitable relationship with power, that it has economic necessity towards that power, and I just don't, I'm not as scared of this as I am of other forms of war technology that we don't know about. This at least has a positive development to it, as opposed to anything that we're seeing in terms on the data corruption, messing with governmental bodies, making it so that new power fronts are able, when I say power here, I mean political power, shifting of power from one party to another. I think that the political end is a lot more scary than how they're getting their energy, and what that energy means in terms of how they're defending themselves from surrounding bodies. But I could be wrong. This might be a bigger threat than other things.
Well, where can people find you?
Find me here on Twitch, just tuna, like the fucking fish, and chip, like the shit you shove in your mouth. I'm also on YouTube. I'm also on Kick. It's all just TunaChip. You don't have to worry about anything. I'm on Twitter. That one's TunaChip TV. God forbid the person who has TunaChip get rid of their profile with literally 0 posts. Anyway, love y'all.
Okay, cool.
Have a good
Thank
Nice
night.
meeting you.
Thank for
No,
Happy
coming.
New Year.
nice talking to you.
Absolutely. Anybody DM me anytime. Bye.
All right. I have a question, actually.
Oh.
So
I think
I'm
I
gonna
think Table
kill
was
you.
trying to get in like for like
Okay.
5 minutes.
No,
I've been
let's-
we need
loading
to
a belt.
we need to edge him. He was ready to unload, but maybe he can store up
Alright.
4 or 5 more
Alright.
loads.
All right, hold on. I have a question, and it's a good question. It's a really good question, in fact. Let's talk about how shitty of a person Tuna. I'm kidding. Okay, so all right. So this is the question. All right, and it's a really tough one. Okay, so North Korea. So this is the 5th question. North Korea and China have been playing around with nukes as well, right? Obviously, you guys have already
It's a technical
mentioned
term.
that. Sure. Wait. What'd you say?
That's the technical term. You play around with nukes. That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big boy toys.
Eastern Asian powers have these weapons, but not everybody agrees that they should, as well as Russia, right? Some may argue that they commit atrocities abroad and within their own nation that other nations are unable to stop, simply also because they have nukes. What happens if a country has nuclear power, commits acts like genocide or ethnic cleansing domestically, but is a nuclear power?
So this actually ties into the points I was gonna make.
put someone else up in.
Yeah. Okay, first off, Aliguana, basically your entire stance can be summed up in the Treaty of the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, or the NPT, which is an already existing treaty signed in 1968, which has almost every country on the planet on it, which for anyone that doesn't know, is based on non-nuclear weapons states agree to never acquire weapons, and nuclear weapons share peaceful nuclear energy and disarm. To non-proliferation, disarmament, and the right to peaceful use nuclear energy. However, while that has worked on the disarmament side, you'll be happy to hear we've gone from 70,300 active weapons in 86 to right now about 13,890. 90% of those are in the US and Russia. So like you can chop that down to like 1,300 are like for everyone else. So a little bit more security there. The problems are where we come to like say China and North Korea actually, is that it's really easy to pop out of this treaty as North Korea has done. They were in it. They just said, I'm out. See ya. And they have nukes and no one seems to really care. I think because everyone realizes they're not going to pull a trigger anyway, or China might be the first one to pull a trigger on them. China holds a very clear no first use policy, which gives them the political clout to, go and do all this stuff in Tibet, and no one can do anything about it.
Hey, mind if I? Oh, sorry, you're done, Table. I want to give you.
Go for it.
Just to clarify one thing. So number one, I'm really not a pessimist. And like you said, my position I think is the de facto right. I think we've been making great progress. I want to see that continue. I don't want to see proliferation of more nuclear states. That's why I was surprised to see so many people like kind of for nuclear proliferation, which because I think there's a reason why the world in general has come to the understanding that nuclear non-proliferation is the goal. It's a huge
but
problem
when you say the world, though, what you mean is the large powers. You don't mean like Kazakhstan doesn't. Actually, Kazakhstan's like I don't know anything about Kazakhstan. Any small country that doesn't.
They used to have nukes too. They were part of the USSR. They had a bunch of nukes.
I don't know a lot about like specifics of like geopolitics.
Here's the principle, right? Is that the signatures to that treaty weren't just nuclear powers, right? You also had non-nuclear powers, because the benefit should be, which as it should have been with Iran when we had our whole Iran deal, was that we want countries to have access. This is why I keep saying we need to be able to policy-wise separate nuclear power and nuclear weapons, because realistically, nuclear power is incredibly advantageous. Every country should have it, right? But the cost is that if a country has the technology for nuclear power, they very easily have the technology for nuclear weapons. So how do we get the good thing without the bad thing?
Not necessarily. You could also just have it be provided to them from other countries, right?
If think about it. If you have an entire nuclear power plant there with, say, nuclear engineers, right? Are you going to isolate that from the entire country? How do you make sure no information is out?
I'm saying that you could have something be under, like in the same way that we currently have Guantanamo Bay under American control within Cuba. you could have bases that are energy bases that are providing energy to other countries that are not owned by them, but are contractually obligated to provide near all of the energy produced to those
Well,
countries, right?
I can
Go ahead.
answer that as a former electrician, because that's just basically raw electricity once it leaves the plant. Distance is a massive factor because of resistance. Because
That's why
we
I'm saying it
don't
should be in
have,
those countries. Yeah,
yeah,
Well,
yeah, but
I'm saying it
because
should be in those
you
countries.
can't do it
Just
long
because
range.
no, just because it's physically in those countries doesn't mean that it's under those countries' domain. You can have it be in the context of what would essentially be the same way as a military base. It would be an energy base, right? So you could have it be physically in a location that is under the domain militarily of a different country, just as we have with
Oh,
lots of
sure.
other things across the world. Yeah.
Including
It just
nuclear
sounds kind of
weapons,
shitty though.
actually.
It still kind of
Yeah,
sounds shitty though.
Well, it does and it doesn't.
That's politically really
It doesn't.
messy, and that I think that's not realistic when you're considering intelligence and when you're considering if let's imagine a situation
Yeah.
if a plant in a foreign country, right? Think of the amount of security you need to make sure that entire country doesn't steal refined uranium, right? Because the whole
It's the
reason
same
this
exact
was
problem
wrong,
for the
China's
setup.
already-
right, was
No, this is
because we were
silly.
concerned about
It's silly.
refined uranium, refined plutonium, and we literally assassinated a scientist. I
Aliguana.
forget the name of it. Trump assassinated one of the chief. Maybe it was Israel. I'm sorry. One of the chief
No one's
nuclear
gonna-
Iranian scientists.
Okay, we already have across Africa, across Southeast Asia, a Silk Road initiative and broader initiatives by the Chinese government that have produced through resource rent proposals massive amounts of infrastructural improvements across those nations, right? So the implication is that in the same way that, yeah, okay, sure, if like Djibouti really wanted to take their port back from China, like sure they could do it, but the result of that is going to be a massive detriment to Djibouti's both financial security and even military security. And so there's no way in hell they're ever going to do it. They're very happy to allow part of their port to be owned by the Chinese. They're very happy to have what we already have, which is a military base, also in Djibouti. Those are things that they're perfectly comfortable with, even if the result is going to be that they're going to have to share in the trade benefits, because those are things that's like how trade works. Right? You have a tit for tat. You have an ability to have certain benefits that go to both parties, right?
Wait,
Yeah,
so,
I mean,
okay,
the
but
main thing
in
is with
this,
nuclear
hold on.
weapons.
Can I go for one? In this specific situation, the reason that you would be setting up energy bases in other countries is because you don't want them to just have the schematics for those means of energy.
Yeah, you don't want to have
production,
nuclear weapons. Yeah.
right?
Correct.
Yeah. The issue is that, like, which I think it's what Iguana was saying, was like, you would need to be actively defending and protecting those bases to like a really
Why is that
insane degree
more-
because
Why is that more true than a port?
because you're not
Nuclear technology?
stealing technology from a port. You're stealing like
And-
items supposedly.
and
the
refined
whole
uranium.
idea, yeah, the whole
You're
idea is
stealing
that you're stealing the
military
technology
equipment.
and the schematics from the energy base so that you can create your own and be
Look.
self-sufficient.
If I take a port, I can take a massive amount of military equipment. If you want to compare it more justly to the case of something like a mine, that's probably a closer analogy, because it's certainly true that a mine has value
Well, then
in and of
use that one.
itself.
The wrong
Okay, sure.
importance,
Let's talk about mines.
resource.
In the case of a mine, yeah. So in the case of a mine, there's massive upfront capital investment that has to be put into it in order to create a mine. Most of that upfront capital investment is coming from Western countries, including in places like Guyana, which are very newly incredibly wealthy because very newly they've found a massive amount of natural resources there. Right? So, like, of course they're going to make a trade deal with BP. Of course they're going to make a trade deal in order to try to figure out how exactly they're going to be able to extract some proportion of the whatever it is, $16 billion of natural resources they've found, right? So like if they get even a fraction of that, get 4 trillion of that, that's going to literally tenfold increase the size of their economy, right?
Look, okay, so look,
It's still good for them.
I have an issue with this type of conversation, okay, because it gets into the nitty gritty, and I'm sure like it's just when geopolitics type conversations get into the nitty gritty, like we're talking about a topic that is right, because the topic is we should be starting from idealistic like points and then working backwards. And then it's like having a big tangle of knots, and you try to find one place and you try to weave it all and work backwards. And as you get to these different knot points, then you try to weave that through, and you still hold tight to your ideal. Okay. And but we get to the point where nobody really is clearly like talking about what their ideal is, and all we're fixated on are all the knots. So we're fixated on, this is how it is in this country, this is how this specific thing has this type of effect in this specific way. But like, you're not actually holding on to an ideal, like in the first point, like what is your ideal and how do you want to get through there? And then once you get to a knot, then what is the problem?
So my ideal would be that I want to have energy independence, ideally, and certainly energy needs met across the third world. So when I look at the fact that currently there's a massive proportion of society, particularly in places like Africa and Southeast Asia, that don't have access to like basic needs like electricity, don't have access to running water, don't have access to all of the kinds of road and infrastructural improvements, train systems that are necessary in order to be part of the international economy. That's a really horrible thing for them. And so my primary concern, if I were someone in Malawi, would be, hey, I really want to be able to trade and sell my grain internationally, right? I want to be able to know. I mean, I was in rural Malawi once, and when I was there, I was talking to through a translator to the local chief. And we asked him, like, what is the biggest improvement that's happened in the 20 years that you've been in charge of your chiefdom, your town? And his answer was, well, we had access all of a sudden to a phone, and so I was able to call up in the capital. I was able to figure out the actual going rate for our grains before we sold it. Before that, we had to just accept the current rate regardless, right? So like these kinds of just like basic improvements of like, I have access to information, I have access to electricity, I have access to running water. These like very basic improvements are a lot more important than whether or not they're like a nuclear war capable country or not. These simply don't matter to the normal people.
Yeah, I think a lot of us would agree that that there needs to be more money and more effort focused on improving the humanitarian conditions in third world countries. The issue, I think, is that number one, your solution is not practical. Number two, the example you gave is not at all analogous. So number one, let's consider, right? Let's imagine our nuclear plant. We put it in a country. We say, hey, we'll give you the power. Do whatever you want with it, right? But this is our stuff. Don't come in here. You can't get to the technology, you can't get the stuff out of here, right? So the issue number one is if, let's say that all of a sudden they do something that makes us mad, we say, no more power for you, right? This is a huge power differential, and you could say, well, so what, it's free, right? But
power differentials already exist.
What country is going to accept, hey, you're going to get all of this, right? And we get no say in it. I think we need to be a little bit realistic about also when we look at the just let me finish one sentence here, then I'll let you
finish. Let finish.
When we're looking, the example you gave is the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, right? And it's a really good example, right? Because we see a lot of development that was not built by these native countries, right? It was China funded a lot of this, right? But then we look at actually the specifics of what happened, right? We could consider the African Union Conference Center and Office Complex. This was like a Capitol building built in, let me check, what country was this?
Yep, that's true.
Yeah, right. But
sure.
It was representing the African Union. Turns out it was laced, right, with microphones, with a lot of spy technology, so that China was getting all this information, right? And I think we need to be realistic that, hey, sure, we could do this, but I think we should. Do we want to be the type of nation that is taking advantage in that way? Or is it better? Is there some way where we can foster independence, but a cooperative relationship? The reason why technology and, say, a resource center is not analogous, anyone who's played a 4X game knows, right, is that when you steal a technology, the ability to reproduce it is the issue, right? The reason why Israel, right, didn't need to keep stealing our intelligence secrets is because once they knew how to build nuclear weapons, they were good, right? They didn't need that from us anymore. And so I think that's a huge difference when we're talking about something to the scale of reaching that critical point of nuclear technology to build nuclear weapons.
This is the problem.
Yeah,
okay, this is why I've already stated this.
Hold on. That was directly to me.
No. Let Quibbles respond really quick, but you have to be very short. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So the first component of like whether or not they would agree to it, absolutely. There's no shadow of a doubt that if offered a nuclear power plant that absolutely Nigeria would say yes, absolutely Malawi would say yes, absolutely Mozambique would say yes. You go down the list. The vast majority of African countries, the vast majority of South American countries, the vast majority of Southeast Asian countries would say yes. So that's the first component. But the second component of it is that, yeah, you're right. There have been examples of resource rent proposals that have not been in support of particularly Southern Africa, and that's absolutely valid. But it is also true that if you're talking about places like Sudan, if you're talking about places like Djibouti, if you're talking about places like Northern Africa, it has been incredibly useful to them. And Nigeria would not be even remotely on the trajectory that they're on currently if it had not been for those kinds of behavior. And so, the broad categorical,
Wrap it up.
rejection of these as a framework of how you go about trade, I think is silly, just based off of the individual cases where they've been harmful for the less well off country.
Okay,
this is
not.
Point of clarification.
This is.
And then you go, Smith.
I'm gonna hate it, but just do it, and then I'm gonna dunk on you.
All right, go for it. All right. Why would the U.S. or any country? You're saying we wouldn't take advantage, right? They would say any country would agree to have a free nuclear power plant. What incentive does the U.S. or any other country build it for free?
I didn't say free. I said resource rent, which is different than free. But continue.
I want to let Smith get in.
Okay, so I often say this. I said this last after Quibbles talked, but like you do go on like all these really specific points about all these things, Quibbles, and for me it like it saps me of all of my energy. To me, the way to untangle this mess of wires is so simple. Like the true answer is like if you want to not have these fucking complicated drama bullshit. It's like any complicated drama bullshit that you hear about, and you're like, oh, and just. We need these little countries, like they need to not be separate. When we want to give another country power and have them have sovereign power, make the deal be you can become a United States state, okay? And then you they
don't want to be states. We don't want to be states. No one wants that.
I know that we don't want them, but that's what my ideal is. Like I mean that's what I want. I mean yes, it would actually be harder for us. It would spread us more thin in ways. But like that's what we have to do.
Just conquer all the other countries.
Conquer them. It's not. I'm not saying conquer them with like.
You're asking for colonialism. The answer is no.
Sure. Yeah. Well, we need colonialism. We could, like having them be separate is the chaos that will destroy the world. We actually do need to move toward like a more unified.
We're not an empire.
I mean, it went really well with
we don't give them like making them part of the United States is good for them. It doesn't mean that we have to take away their identity and their they can,
white man's burden aside, we're not an empire. I'm sorry that it's no longer the 1600s. Okay, you're going to have to move forward. We're not going to be.
Okay, so the reason the reason that is a solution to the dilemma here is because you're arguing about giving a sovereign state like access to technology that will greatly improve the lives of everyone there, but could give them access, could open the Pandora's box of giving them access to nuclear weapons, and then that would be create chaos in the world, and it brings us that much closer to like the fail state happening where there's global nuclear war. Okay,
and so if we're
going to give this miracle cure power that it's going to make everybody's life better to a sovereign state, just to be like, okay, you're part of your brothers. We're brothers now. We're brothers and sisters. Okay, that's the solution.
Mutually beneficial trade doesn't require that we be the same country. Like
I'm not saying mutually beneficial trade. I'm saying giving them the sovereign state the actual nuclear power plant. That's what I'm saying. Giving them everything we have. Like you're one of us now.
Hold on,
they don't need to be one of us. They can be their own independent country. That's okay.
But that causes all this drama.
Hold on. Smith, you mentioned you don't really. No, hold on. Smith, you mentioned that you don't really do geopolitics, and it's showing real hard here. You know why most of the instability in Africa and the Middle East is like all a thing, and in Eastern Europe in the 90s is all a thing, is because the large powers shoved a bunch of different ethnicities and religions and languages all together super arbitrarily and said, hey, you're now bigger states than you already were. And
did I say to do that?
Why most of the problems. You literally just said that. You said exactly that. You said, but
actually,
worse,
I literally didn't just say that. Okay,
separate them on ethnic and religious grounds, clearly, guys.
Yeah, no,
right, Smith.
Well, actually, I don't want ethno-states, but what I'm saying is like so you can't. We shouldn't just go in and like create a country and then say, okay, you're a country now. Okay, like deal with it now. Govern yourself.
Which we
No,
have done
I'm saying,
before.
yeah, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying like you are actually part of us. You are like a new. You are a 51st
But they
state of the
don't
United
want
States
that.
of America. Congo. Sorry, I'm so sorry that I know it's great for you to be Congo.
Smith,
Okay, but now you're Congo, the fucking
want
51st state of the United States. And you know how much of a difference that would make? We give them a nuclear power plant. Okay, there's no downside except for maybe some
I'm not
pissing
right
people
now.
pissing around
Listen,
about
they
their
don't
ethnic
want that.
identity.
Puerto Rico is already part of the United
Yes.
States. Puerto Rico has not been
It's shitty.
necessarily exclusively
Build more
benefited
nuclear power
by-
plants in Puerto
It's
Rico.
shitty. We need to make
Neither
them an
is
actual state.
USDI, neither has Guam, right? It is not true
Make it a state.
that having these
Smith,
whether
just
they're
think of all the
stuff-
alterations
Make
we would
China
do
a
the
state. That
flags.
would work.
Like it just seems
Like-
like really expensive and kind of pointless.
Okay.
You know?
Well, hold on. Here's the thing: if we make
No,
a
no,
mistake,
no, no, no,
okay, it's
no.
still
Let's-
it's still a
listen to
landmass with 250 ethnic groups and
There are
700 different
different
languages.
It's not realistic. Yeah. It's just not
There are
realistic. Smith.
different-
What do you mean, like China? Like
There are
China, you
different-
wouldn't make China a state. You would make China like a group of states.
Your solution is not realistic.
A
Well, okay, you
territory.
organize
or-
it because you guys are arguing with me about organizing it. Like, oh, but it would be organized poorly. No, you don't take away their organization. You don't take away their actual ability to govern. You don't like destroy everything they have. You just make them like equals on the same level playing field
No, no.
as you.
You agree
The
this is
problem is
fantasy,
they're
right?
already
Like,
having problems.
Yeah,
They're
okay, so
already poorly managed.
You guys are dealing and with a bunch of like bullshit drama where there's no winning, and I'm giving you a fantasy way
What about what
that
I've
you can
described is-
actually win.
Hey, Smith, let me respond real quick. Because
Everyone's winning.
yeah, so I think I think number one, actually, really quick. Wait, Quibbles, did you ever do Equestrian?
I'm sorry, say it one more time.
Did you ever do Equestrian?
As in, have I ridden horses?
Because you are a really good gish galloper, I got to tell you. But anyways, to respond to Smith, mic drop.
Finn Shapiro.
Got him.
Sorry, Jewish part not related. Sorry.
How
So
dare you from those?
So Smith, here's my solution, which I think is realistic, and it's not about everything bad. It's about mitigating the bad things, maximizing the good things, right? And like Table did a really good job pointing out, my proposition is the de facto position of the world right now, right? Which is nuclear non-proliferation. Let's minimize the amount of nukes. Let's build up our alliances, build strong bonds. We're not going to annex any countries as states, right? Let's minimize the amount of weapons there are. Let's minimize the amount of buttons there are, right? And decreasing tensions overall. I think that's realistic. I think anyone disagrees with that is fucking crazy. And I think that's the most reasonable position to have on the subject.
Love you too.
So out of curiosity,
That's just the
I guess
status
the
quo.
solution. I guess the solution in that case, if you're like trying to minimize the amount of buttons, then would that involve like directly monitoring or like getting on top of like countries that don't have access?
You
to
don't have
nuclear
to
weaponry
do that
currently?
if they're actually one of you.
Well, yeah, so a proxy, instead of annexing them militarily or colonizing them as Smith wants to do, I would say just maybe forging diplomatic relations, alliances, right? NATO has been a great job. Surprisingly, we haven't, made Germany or Spain part of the United States yet, but Germany has no nuclear weapons, but they are still defended by U.S. security guarantees, right? There are
And our
countries.
nukes.
Yeah,
Literally,
exactly.
Like we have
That is-
our nukes inside German borders, manned by our people.
They're that close to being a United States state.
Exactly. If that's your definition of the state, Smith, I'll agree with you on that. If we can, hey, let's have global cooperation. You get to be your country.
Okay.
Can we put some military bases there? Something like that.
The difference would be the thing that would change it would be they get a senator. That's what I'm saying. Like that.
Wait, but that's just the UN representation, right? You're just like
No,
you
no,
just
not
want
not UN, not
reform
UN,
it.
United States.
But what's the point of that?
You don't
for president?
Okay. This is a broader conversation that has nothing to do with nuclear weapons, but
It's-
I want to have a long conversation with Smeth about unions. because I don't think
No,
that Smeth believes in unions.
This
and
is
that's
a
the
panel.
problem.
This is a panel. Okay, stop.
I know. Smith, I demand an agony Kai, okay? A one-on-one agony Kai to the death, okay?
Fine.
over the matter of unionization, okay?
Okay.
Stop.
It's gonna be a long 3-hour debate, okay? And I will destroy you. Okay, but it's gonna be a different conversation than this one, so let's move on.
Wait. I actually have a question. How do you guys feel about Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Go.
I think it was good.
Based.
You good. You drop more of them.
Yeah. No. Not drop more of them. But if you look like geographically speaking, the damaged area was pretty isolated. And as far as like, there was going to be a country that got nuked at some point. If like having it be an isolated island
Might as
nation
well be
and only a
Japan.
corner of it, it's pretty. I feel like it's pretty optimal as far as like places that could get nuked. Like.
Also, like, here's the thing: it was the least of 4 evils by like a long shot. Those specific people were fated to die. It was just a question of how, because there were 3 other major options. There was either we unleashed the bat bomb on them, which was going to be at minimum 10 times up to 24 times worse. Look into the bat bomb; it's crazy. The bats bomb. Literally, we strap like napalm bombs to bats, and because all their stuff is made of wood, the damage is going to be vastly worse, way worse.
Like the animal bats.
This sounds
Yeah,
like a
like
comic
literally
book
the animal
thing.
bat. No, this was a real thing.
Yeah.
We actually made this.
This
We
is
actually
fucked
made
up.
this.
Hibernating Mexican free-tailed bat with a small-timed incendiary bomb attached.
That's it.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
How many times
literally
was this used?
Only in testing once, where it nearly lit the bunker where the generals were on fire as well.
Bro, the
Which
bats
is why the Marines loved it.
They've been planning this shit for a while, all right?
Yeah. So
worried
the
about
other
the
two.
details.
So the other 2 ones was either an American invasion or a Russian invasion, both of which were calculated for deaths in the millions. So like the nukes were like the least evil option. That was definitely going to put them over the edge.
We got to make the gay bomb.
Based.
I think
Wow, so you
Just
guys
let it hang. That was good.
yeah, so I think I'm probably the most anti-nuclear weapon person here, and even I would say that it was probably, of the decisions, it was probably one of the least bad ones, right? Anyone who says, "Oh, Japan was about to surrender," I think is playing, historical revisionism. I think that it was really clear, like the at least Hitler had the decency to shoot himself in the head, right? Like Hirohito, the Japanese war spirit had not seemingly been defeated yet. The idea that like Russia was about to conquer them, I think that when we're talking, I think Table was summarized really well. That all of the other options, you either have napalm bombings or you have land invasions, right? Both of those lead to more casualties, right? And so then what's the major difference is, I guess, you look at the nuclear fallout, right? Those are the things that was the long-term impact in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. At this point, right, it's been 80 years, and that is
both
largely
fully recovered.
Yeah, it's these have largely bounced back. I think that it is really hard to say that that Hiroshima and Nagasaki were unjustified or the worst decision. I think they're worse decisions.
I guess I have a question, and it's like, would you then say like any kind of bad action is justified as long as they eventually recover?
No, even more pointed, more pointed than that. If like, would you say that any decision is good as long as there are worse decisions that you can think of?
No. So
it's called governments. That's how that works.
That sounds like shit. You guys have no
Well, no,
imagination.
okay.
If that's the case, you have no imagination.
Wait, it's not so much that there's worse things that we can think of. It's that there are worse things that were going to happen if we didn't do this. So it's like, yes, it's a shitty thing, but like the lesser of 2 evils, like he was saying, that's what government is. Like it's.
Yeah, so like, for example, roads, right? Like a ton of people die in car crashes all the time. We could fix that tomorrow by making the speed limit 3 miles an hour, but no one's going to go for that. And then we also can like build a bunch of like road barriers. We could also build a bunch of.
We could just build more trains, though. We could just build more trains.
We need trains. I'm fully in support.
No more car crashes. Bring horses
check
back.
out the US. It's way too big.
All right,
anyway,
too big.
Well, we need to federalize the locomotive industry
and
first.
I've used a whole bunch of my cell stuff, and so it's becoming expensive. But I adore you all.
Thank you for your cells.
All right, yes, shout yourself
All
out. Where can people find you?
Yeah, at QuibbleC on Twitter and also at QuibbleC on YouTube. I'm currently writing a YA dystopia on like Dream-ish, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, have a good one.
Wait, not even a closing statement. What the fuck?
Vanished.
His closing statement was 3 miles per hour. That's your limit.
Okay. Jesus.
All right. I'm
Jesus
ready
Christ.
to probably leave soon too.
Okay, sure. All right.
Well, here,
is
Seth,
it
can
now?
I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Seth, I just wanted to ask, because I think we've had a few things. So I wanted to get your take on what is your? Do you think that policy-wise we can separate nuclear power and nuclear weapons?
Wait, who are you asking?
No,
Seth. Smeth, sorry.
no. Actually, I do not think we can. But that's why I want to just that's why colonialism. But I'm not saying colonialism like I'm saying the only thing that would be the deterrent to this type of colonialism is some identitarian bullshit. I'm not talking about overturning countries and changing their laws and shit. I'm talking about going in, giving them voting power and building roads for them and shit. And when we do that, and then we give them a power plant and shit like that, that's because we can't disentangle nuclear power from nuclear weapons. So the only way to responsibly proliferate nuclear power is to proliferate us. Then we don't have you don't have to make more nuclear weapons. It's basically it's very similar to what you're saying of conglomerating people, but my way is different, because your way, I think, actually has more fail points, more points of failure, more critical points of failure, because these being different countries and stuff, there is a lot of chaos. Having them all be one, having them all be a single country, they all have the same incentive, they all have the same goals. The benefit of this place is now in the benefit of us. We're all in it together. In that case, then there is less chaos. There's less fail states.
No, I think that is a very reasonable take to say, hey, if there were some united government, we would have fewer fail points. But now I would like to ask, what do you think, say, the percentage chance of that happening, say, within the next 200 years?
Low, because people are stupid.
It's zero, right? It's near zero.
Yes, I know, but
so that's my point. Is that I think what you're saying is pretty close to the status quo. I forget who said it. I described my position. They're like, that's just the status quo, and yeah, that is right. And because I think we've been making good progress, and I think we need to keep it up. What I've been surprised to hear is that arguments against that. And so Smith, it seemed to me that you were saying that you were against the current status quo, and I fail to understand why.
Okay, so because when we are doing it that way, and we're having these little countries with
alliance structures,
not a lot of military power and stuff, reliant, what we're doing is we're creating a situation where we have all these proxy wars all over the place. And if we just make these countries, we bring them all into the fold, we can't have proxy wars anymore, because we can't. It's not a proxy anymore. It's us.
Yeah, but I understand the benefit. But then let's multiply that by the realisticness, right? Of that's not going to happen. There is no way. There is no world in the next 200 years where the United States annexes every African nation, right? Or China annexes every Asian nation, and then we have 2 or 3 superpowers, right? The only way this gets there.
We're going to be that much further if every time anybody suggests anything that doesn't exactly match the status quo, everybody says it's not realistic and totally dismisses the conversation. You're not doing totally dismissing the conversation, but he's absolutely not dismissing the conversation. But that's what happens when people have these idealistic ideas.
Let me offer a counter.
Ideas, sorry.
Thanks, Foodshops. I was going to call him out. I'm glad you did that. Thanks.
So should Russia annex Ukraine then in that case, because it would make a larger conglomerate?
Actually, yeah, I think it's stupid that we're we want we care so much about the independence of Ukraine as as an independent. They're probably better off being just part of Russia, or just make them part of us. Well, either make them a United States state, or just say no, just become part of Russia. Fuck it.
So I guess, Smith, to understand your positions, you're a colonialist. You like separation on ethnic, religious grounds.
No,
you believe Russia should control Ukraine.
Want separation on ethnic.
Overall, just are a little bit racist.
I'm very against ethno.
A little bit. What do you think about gay people?
Well,
I'm
you
just
did
fucking
say
with
the
you.
gay bomb, so
I'm-
I
Is
no.
think-
the gay bomb- What is it?
Yeah,
Is the gay bomb
true.
that only kill gay people? Is that what it does,
The gay
Smith?
bomb is like a meme from like South Park. It was like the military made like a bomb that would turn a whole country gay, and like so like the bat thing made me think of that. Is it's just
so
like
what you're saying is you're pro-ethnic cleansing, because that's what the result of that.
Yeah,
would
you want to
be.
get rid of
No
straight
more-
people.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
wouldn't be mating anymore, right? So,
yeah, who would we drop the gay bomb on?
Yeah.
But here's my question, Smith, is that it feels to me like there are real examples that are pretty close to like getting towards a more unified government. So one example I think is really good is the European Union, right? We've seen it's also had the luck of historical advantage of being very wealthy, right? But after World War II, there was a lot of destruction there, and we've seen overall separate nations have this unified multinational structure that has made them much safer, much more closer trade, right? Much intertwined industries, right? Where there's really no way that, say, France and Germany can go to war because just the resources are not there, right? They're so interdependent. And what I'm asking is that to me seems much more realistic than saying, hey, US, let's just go fucking invade Ukraine, instead of saying, hey, Ukraine, right? Like, let's maybe get to a stability point where eventually we can get to either NATO or the EU or something where there is that codependence.
So, like, I'm not against incrementalism, and I think that those codependence and interdependence, like, stuff, like, at some point, like if say that goes on, like, in a perpetuity, like, there's no catastrophic events and stuff. Like, at some point, like, you become more and more enmeshed in each other. At some point, you got to be like, look, we're not like a different country. We don't like. Why do we care?
So if Russia says that to the Ukrainians, like
I'm saying that about like France and Germany, and like in a situation where they have very good like symbiotic relationship type of thing. Like
They don't. That's the
Let me
funny
put it
part.
this way.
Who wants
As a
to
German,
take France in as their part of their country? That's
yeah,
terrible.
as a German, France and Germany will never be the same country, but we'll be pretty fucking close. Like, the thing I think that is important to consider is that it is that type of incrementalism. I think arguing more for that, I think is much more advantageous.
no, I'm not against that. I'm just I still want to hold on to the vision. I don't want to because when you are to me your position is like a you're saying that my vision's impossible, even though I think some of the things that you think are a step towards my vision. You're saying that's the end.
Let me put it this. Sorry, I want to give someone else a chance. Go ahead.
That's
Wait,
how you make large-scale social changes, through smaller incremental changes that act toward your goal. Like, you could that's kind of the whole issue with like far-leaning political angles, is like you're not going to restructure the entirety of a government.
Yeah, I already said that I am not against incrementalism. I'm for it. I just
Okay,
don't want to
so
let go of ideals. I don't think we should. We
But
should
why
we
does-
shouldn't
I mean-
lie and pretend that we don't have an ideal. Like I think the ideal would be for like the whole world to have a single government where we all are a human, like we all are in it together type thing. That would be the best in this state that we have, where we have the internet and we have a global economy. That would be the most safe, best way to have like a world, an Earth.
Here's a major criticism I have of that, is at least the way you've described it, right? Where you say, oh, what should happen is, say, Germany should have a United States senator. Is what you're doing there is you're making one government, right, supreme over the others, right? And what you're saying basically is that when you talk about colonialism, these types of things, I think that is incongruent with the way modern international relations work. I don't think that type of international cooperation, I don't think that leads to everybody, being, becoming a U.S. state. I think what eventually it leads to is a more empowered United Nations. I think that's a big difference, because when you're telling every other country, hey, you could be part of the United
Sure.
States, versus, hey, you could be part of the world.
Right, sure.
Also,
I
like,
do
the
agree, but that's
cultural
why I guess
divides.
I'm making distinction, because to call another country like literally the same as us, like they are part of our country, means like, so if we were to go balls deep and be like, Ukraine, you're one of us now, like that would be like a massive, like we have to win. it would mean the global nuclear war. But like, but and obviously, I'm not saying I'm just saying the amount of difference that would make. I'm not talking about doing that in the context of war. I'm talking about doing that in the context of economic power and prosperity, not in the context of war.
I hear what you're saying, but I think, for example, the defense agreement, that's arguably not that different from just inviting them to NATO, right?
Yeah.
And to me, I think that's the major criticism is I think the way you talk about it, number one, is I think not realistic when you talk about the U.S. stuff, which I think you grant. And number two, I think it's insulting to other nations that say, "Hey, you could just be part of the U.S." instead of saying,
"Yeah, I know, but
hey,
I don't care about that. I don't like. I'm actually so I'm extremely against ethno-states. Like I don't like this whole like. It doesn't mean that your like your cultural identity disappears to do that. We're clinging to things like it's a big part of what's going on in the Israel Hamas Palestine conflict, where people are clinging to these like ethnic ideas and these distinctions and stuff that like really like in extreme ways that are like causing such massive rifts where like they are completely delusional and unable to see through the trees through the forest or whatever.
Actually, that's more an issue of nationalism, though. If you want to see ethno issues, go look at Africa, like Central Africa, like the Somalia, Ethiopia, Congo wars. Those are actual ethnic struggles.
But also, Israel is an ethno state.
Debatable.
Sort of, kind. It has Arabian members of government, and like 20% of its population are Arabians. So like, not really.
The age-old question of is Jewish an ethnicity is like the
there's also
we'll never know. There is no true answer.
Yeah.
They want to define it as one.
They'd have a tough time because they got
it actually is
Jews and
different.
Israeli Jews. Yeah. So like,
I understand that it actually is different.
Unanswerable. It's kind of like it's a paradox, right?
Well, no. I think an ethnicity is an arbitrary thing. You define ethnicity like ethnicity. I like ethnicity more than race. It makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, race isn't real. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, but ethnicity is like because it's like race is the sex to gender being like ethnicity, except race isn't actually real at all. So, but like ethnicity being a construct makes a lot more sense. So I think if they want to define Jews as an ethnicity, which I'm against, I think that makes it makes it worse for Jews to do that.
Why? Why is that?
Because Jews are scapegoated, and so for them to like create this like stronger ethnicity and stuff, like and try to like bind together, it makes a more us versus them type mentality, and I think it feeds into anti-Semitism.
So what you're saying is you don't want the let the Jews band together?
I think that a lot of
you want to launch a gay bomb at them too.
So I didn't until I started like doing this online shit. I didn't even know what a Jew looked like, and now I kind of do. I don't always do because there's different types of Jews and stuff, like genetically and stuff.
Hold on.
But like I think it's
there's like a description in a book.
It's such a shitty thing to me that it's such a shitty thing to me personally. I feel like hurt if I can identify somebody as Jewish by the way they look, because a year ago I thought they were just white, and they took that away from me, and they could have just been white to me, and like so that's fucked up. Like no, they've done the opposite of the melting pot. They've taken themselves out of the melting pot, and they want to and so that's what I think feeds into anti-Semitism. It makes it worse.
Okay,
Smith,
I've got a question.
What about black people? So if you identify
can you tell when a person's black?
Because their color is clearly like black and darkened, right? Then would you go like, damn, I feel guilty because
no, I've always been able to tell when black people are black because they're black.
I'm colorblind. Don't shit.
Yeah, they all look the same. I don't know.
Okay, I got a question for Carol. It's actually about nukes. Okay, Kez back on nukes.
Sure. Yeah. How do black people relate to nukes?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. No, go ahead.
Okay.
If you had a nuclear bomb, one country, which one would it be?
Ooh,
Nigeria. I'm kidding.
Jump on Russia and nuke Ukraine. That'd be good.
The Congo.
Okay. So, all right. So, little bit of Bill for this makes sense. It's very short though. So nuclear weapons is a whole category of weapons. We've actually designed nuclear weapons as small down as to like the equivalent of like fired off a bazooka mounted on the back of a Jeep. It was a terrible idea, but we made it. It exists. The yield on a nuke is extremely variable. Not all of them are city killers. There's like bunker buster types. There's tacticals meant for actual battlefield application. There's anti-air nukes, EMPs, etc. The trend seems to be as we develop more nukes, is that they are smaller, more precise, and also much cleaner as far as their radiological fallout. Does that trend change any of this math for anyone as we go forward?
The issue that I saw with the thermonuclear stuff, it has like a lower like severity of radiation, but it lasts longer supposedly. So
But
it's not
scatters
exactly
more.
like yeah.
Which,
Um,
because when it scatters more, it actually has less like actual health detriments because the amount you're actually getting is less.
right, but is that still like a I'm not super up on the specific facts on the radiation
I
though.
may have spent all day researching for this panel. I
Is
have a
it
whole Google Doc.
with the like 3-step
Fucking
thermonuclear?
nerd.
Is the
Yes.
radiation level low enough that it's like livable or?
Yeah, there's actually been from all the tests we did in both Nevada and apparently a couple in Washington State, I guess. There's actually noticeable like trace amounts all through Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona. And man, no one has really noticed, have they? Because that was done back in like the 50s.
All right. I gotta go.
Okay, thank you so much for coming along. Where can people find you?
You can find me
Real
on YouTube as
Sorry.
Real Smeth, and you can find me on Twitter as Real Smeth. And you can find me in the Smeth Den, and I'll be here every time you need a nice dose of Smethamphetamine when you wake up, and a nice dose of Smethadone when you go to sleep. I got you covered for both ends of the day. It's Real Smeth on YouTube. Let's go, baby.
All right, awesome.
All right, baby, let's go. Okay. Okay. I don't like talking about geopolitics and stuff because I'm so idealistic and I feel like I get like butted out of these conversations. And I don't know shit about like specifics about different countries and shit, and I'm not even interested in that. I'm just not interested in that. But I am interested in the topics. I'm interested in the topics in ways that people don't want to engage in. A good topic that people will engage with me in the way I want to be engaged with is AI, because they have to have creativity in their thought. Anyway, you know what it is. Going to bed. Probably sometime soon, huh? You're gonna close your eyes. And you're gonna dream of sugar plums and wherever the fuck. 'Cause tomorrow is New Year's Eve. And the number on the calendar is gonna change by one. It's gonna change by 1, and that's a big deal. It's a very big deal. The calendar number is changing tomorrow, guys. It's a very big deal. Happy New Year's. Good night.